because Dr. Jamal Bryant came on my podcast.
Shout out Jamal.
Yes.
Dr. Jamal Bryant.
And he said to me,
you
he's got to, and he's coming.
Is
he coming?
Yeah.
Has he been invited?
Yes, he has.
Okay.
They gave us a date of December, January, and then things are blowing up, so we're waiting.
He's coming. I'm just going to
Jamal.
speak. He wants to come.
I used to go to the gym with him. You know me. We used to go at 5 o'clock in the morning. So,
yes. Yeah. But he said something to me, and I'm getting to why I left. He said something to me on my podcast. He said the black church owes you an apology. And I was just like, I almost broke down. He said, it's a shame that you had to go to the white church to be supported at this level.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Smitty and D show, guys. And of course, I'm Tony D. And of course, this voice is going through some changes since Japan. I'm struggling, but we're getting through it. We're getting through. But guys, in the studio, we've got a pastor. We're going to ask him all kind of questions. First off, he's kind of popular. He's a little popular here in Atlanta, but also all over the world. He is an author. He's a speaker and a media personality. Welcome to the studio, Pastor Sam Collier. That was terrible.
Right. But we did it.
I know, right? So I heard you're out here in these streets fighting Satan. How's that going?
I'm trying. It's like, can I get him in the third round?
I'm just saying, you looking good for,
right.
For coming up against him. Like,
right.
You know what I'm saying? But you got an interesting story. You're originally from Atlanta.
Yeah.
And I know that. But you really got your claim to fame on a show by some information that maybe you didn't know about, or some stuff that you didn't know about on the Steve Harvey show. Tell us about that. What's going on? And also you had a book that kind of talked about it too, called A Greater Story.
Well, one, y'all have had everybody on the show. And I just want to thank you for the opportunity, for this platform. I don't take it lightly. God has blessed y'all.
Yeah.
And it's an honor to be considered.
Aww.
I have a twin sister.
Yeah.
And we got adopted at 2 months, but we reunited with our biological family for the first time after 25 years on the Steve Harvey Show, national television. Didn't know that we had siblings. Didn't even know if our parents were still alive. And it kind of came about because my father, who adopted us, he has like this, he does, this prophetic gift, this little prophetic gift. He had a barbershop down on Auburn Avenue.
Okay.
And he was a pastor for about 4 years, so I'm a little bit walking in his, shadow. Yeah. But he would, if you go to the barbershop on Monday or Tuesdays, slower.
Yeah.
You go on Saturday, it's packed. Black barbershop, you've seen the movie. Yeah. And so every day he would watch the Steve Harvey Show. And as he watched, he said one day the Lord spoke to him and said, Steve Harvey's going to help you find your biological family.
Wow.
And we thought he was crazy. And it came up on a wild afternoon.
Out of all the people, Steve was the one.
He just watched the show every day. He was like, Steve's going to help you do this.
I worked on that show while we were in Chicago.
Did you really?
Yeah, I did.
See, you really the famous one.
I don't know about that, but full circle.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was right. And, my sister didn't want to write into the show, but he convinced her. And a year later, they called us. But, the story itself was pretty shocking, and it's where kind of the brand A Greater Story was birthed. When your story connects to God's story, it leads to a greater story. And so, we were born into not, extreme poverty, because I've been to Africa, but poverty. Dad was addicted to drugs, passed away from drug addiction in the middle of COVID. And so when him and my mother had me and my twin sister, he was out of the picture. My mother was 21, had 3 kids already, 5 kids, 21, trying to figure out what to do with the 3 she already had. And so I call it kind of the Moses story, sent us up the river in hopes that it would work out. It worked out. A couple came and adopted us, black couple. It's funny because it's interesting how many, when I put the book out, people would ask, well, was it like, did you get adopted by white people? Because I guess that's a thing, right?
Yeah.
But
was
no,
a thing.
It was a thing. It was a thing. But black couple adopted us, had just given their life to Christ for the first time a year prior to that, and raised us. So.
Now, did they have kids? I'm always interested. I grew up foster care.
Yeah.
And never got adopted.
Yeah.
But did they have other kids?
My dad. So the interesting part about their story, they met in the laundromat about 2 years before that on a Sunday. Both of them getting ready to go through a divorce. My mother, and I refer to her, as mom that adopted me. She was married to a Black Panther. And the day before, so civil rights, all that. I know we'll get into that.
Yeah.
Yes. So I got all that from her. She's from Washington, D.C., but they met in D.C. While she's married to this Black Panther, and he was a little aggressive and abusive, hit her in the head with a hammer.
Oh, boy.
And the next day she got up to go kill him.
Oh. I can kind of see it.
Right. And so she goes to the laundromat to have an alibi. And so if anybody's like, where were you at 3? She was at the laundromat. And as she's walking around the laundromat with this gun in her purse, she meets my dad, who's also going through his second divorce, had kids in the first marriage, and then a stepdaughter in the second marriage. And then both of them didn't work out. And they end up meeting each other. They both walk out, start dating, go through a divorce, and go, maybe we should try Jesus.
Yeah. Try that first.
Right. And give their life to Christ, get married, and found out she couldn't have kids, but she always wanted to have kids. And so she adopted us.
So the most important thing about this story is we need to know where the Black Panther guy is. What happened to him? Was he okay?
I don't know. I think he just faded to black.
I mean,
he didn't get killed from my understanding.
Listen, let me tell you something. What I do know, listen, back in the day, stuff used to happen.
Yeah.
All the time. I'm pretty sure my grandmother killed a couple of people.
You think so?
Oh, my goodness.
Is Granny still living?
No, she's gone.
Granny
but
gone.
I'm telling you what I know. The stories, I'm like, people used to come up missing. My grandmother did not play.
So we can't get Granny no more.
I'm just saying she's not around. But I used to warn people I would date. I was like, listen, if
Don't
my
mess with me.
grandmother makes the hit, you're gone. I'm not kidding with you. Rest in peace.
Yeah,
but I mean,
yeah.
name change and everything. But
Wow.
it was some serious stuff. But stuff happened back then.
Yeah.
And we didn't have the technology that we have now.
Absolutely.
So you
just
come up missing.
You lost.
And you just on the back of a milk carton.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like that was your life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry to this man.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so you grew up off of Auburn Avenue.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that
Yeah.
beautiful, historic, business and African American community. Of course, MOK, Ebenezer
Yeah.
Baptist Church, the King family.
Yep.
What was that like growing up over there?
Wow. It's interesting that me and my twin sister grew up on Auburn because when we were born and our parents came to adopt us, the lady in the home said, you don't want to adopt them, they're probably not going to be much because where they came from. Addiction, cocaine, all these things, they're probably going to be mentally challenged is what they told my parents. And so my mother, praying mother, she prays and she hears from the Lord and says that God says to her, they're going to be okay. And these are your kids. So they adopt us and raise us on the most historic street, in African American culture, birthplace of civil rights.
Yeah.
And so we grow up and, my sister gets all A's from kindergarten to 12th grade, goes to Spelman, Georgia Tech, becomes an industrial engineer.
Yes.
And I become me. And we just, God just.
Also, yes.
Right. We just kind of defy these odds. But it's interesting. The soil, on Auburn Avenue is littered with so much greatness and history. And so it's interesting. I don't know. I was telling somebody this because I spent a large part of my Christian career in predominantly white spaces. The first part was in predominantly African American spaces, and then a large part was in predominantly white spaces. And it's funny, when they asked me about African American culture and history, I remember saying to one individual, I didn't know what it meant to not consider black as excellent. Wow. Because I grew up seeing it everywhere. The club, the Peacock, right across the street from my dad's barbershop, Marvin Gaye James Brown.
The Royal Peacock.
Yeah, the Royal Peacock. My uncle, who's my dad's brother, who gave him the barbershop, used to cut Daddy King's hair and drove him home, often. And so I just, black excellence was normal for me. It was almost an expectation that you're African American, you are, birthed out of the seed of greatness. We overcame a lot. You should be able to accomplish, and you should accomplish. And there's greatness on the inside. So growing up, I think on Auburn helped shape my mentality around who I should be, what was possible, and what we could be.
I love that. I told you, too, that I had a business close to there. And it was a constant reminder of excellence. And if I was ever depressed or sad or doubtful, I used to go to the King Museum, and I would walk around, and that would happen.
Above ground tombs.
Yeah, that was kind of weird. But and this is when Coretta was still alive. But I would walk around, and I would get... I don't want to say downloads, but I would get the energy. You know what I mean? Like, I got to do better. I am better. Like, you can feel it. And I don't know how to explain it better than that. You can feel it. The hustle is strong. It really is. Now, that all kind of like, I don't want to say ended, but, City of Atlanta decided to put a highway right down and slash it, like separate. I don't know if you probably weren't alive during that time. But the energy crossed over almost down to Peachtree Street, and they put a highway, and they divided Auburn Avenue in that energy.
Wow.
And that was the downfall of Auburn Avenue.
Divided it from what?
So Auburn Avenue, where 7585 is, that wasn't there.
7585 didn't exist.
Did not exist. So that Auburn Avenue street continued all the way down to Peachtree Street. Wow. So if you can imagine, you saw all the houses. You saw, the King House, and then of course across the street you saw the Shotgun Homes, and you saw all the businesses and the funeral home and Cox Communication, the barber shop and the Royal Peacock, and then just more businesses and more businesses, and that was kind of our I don't know, our town square, if you will.
Wow.
And when they put that highway in the middle, the energy changed. Everybody. I used to interview people during, obviously years ago, but they lived during that time, and they said it was one of the worst things that happened to that community. Yeah.
Do you feel like it was intentional?
I do. But I think a lot of things is intentional.
Yeah.
But the way that I look at it, because I have a lot of white friends, I don't think it's a matter of them saying we hate blacks. We love us. You know what I mean? Like, I choose myself over anything else, or I choose people who look like me over anything else. I think that's really what people don't understand. Sometimes racism is just not racism.
Yeah.
It's just, I choose my gang. And I think with us, we love humans of all shapes and sizes first.
Community,
Yeah. And so we love people. And so we choose people. We don't really necessarily, I don't know about back then, but now, we don't always choose us. And I think we probably need to start looking over like, okay, you need help? You know what I mean? But yeah, I think that's really what it is. So,
but I want to riff on that because I tell you, it's an interesting story I share because I grew up obviously all black till about, like, black friends, black teachers, black neighborhood, black everything, till about 21. I got my first white friend at 21. Even though I went to DeKalb School of Performing Arts and we were kind of in a mixed community, it was just me and really the black folks. It was like, it was them, and it was kind of. So I went on this unique journey from 21 to about 28 of just learning what I call white culture. And it's interesting because white people don't think they have a culture. But because America is essentially their culture, and so when I would refer to it as white culture, they would say, "Culture? We don't have no culture." I was like, "Okay, you have a culture. Friends, Starbucks, you go down the list." But in that, I remember I built a relationship with a friend of mine, my first white friend, and we had really deep, honest discussions for like 4 years, and we said we would never repeat it. I mean, he gave me permission. I swear I can't, because I am going to repeat one of the conversations. Okay. In that conversation, I was trying to understand that concept of loving us over so on and so forth versus it being just being prejudiced or racist. And I said to him, okay, let me tell you a story. I said, so if it is 8 of us around a campfire, and it's 4 blacks, and then 4 whites, and we all are starving, and if we don't eat, we're all gonna die. If there's a pie, we're all, if it's an African American in charge, we're gonna cut it up into 8 pieces. We're going, you get one, you get one, you get one, you get one. I said, what would y'all do? And he said, well, if it's me and my family, I'm gonna cut it up into 4 pieces. And I'm gonna give it to my family because it's my job to take care of our family first. And it was a straight face. It wasn't malicious. It was, this is what we've been taught to do. We take care of our own. And then after we are good, then we will look out to try to. So it's an overflow mentality. While African Americans, we have a mentality of, hey, I'm my brother's keeper.
Right.
I'm responsible for everyone in the room, even if you don't look like me.
Yeah, I know that.
And that is essentially a kingdom idea. But I just wanted to share that story.
That is brilliant. I'm in awe now, but it makes me think maybe the reason why they do that is because, I mean, there's obviously an illusion that they are the majority in the world, but there's only 7%. Like 7% of all humans are white. 7. And it might be 9, but it's less than 10. Everybody else is melanated. So if you have numbers like that, maybe it's like kind of coded in your DNA to try to stay alive as much as possible. You know, kind of hoard resources and opportunities for you and yourself. But 8 people, he's cutting 4 pieces and he's giving it to his family.
Yeah, and for him, that's not a bad thing. For him, it's a responsible thing, a stewardship thing. I am responsible for them. I'm not responsible for you, but I need to make sure they're straight first. But if you look at that mentality and how it's grown over the decades and over the centuries, you can see it play out in business. This is why many of it goes back to slavery, but this is why many of the Fortune 500 companies are run by white individuals, because there is this sense of, we're going to take care of our people, our family, our friends, and that is how they've been able to maintain power and then transition it. And I'm not saying that we should totally lean into that, but I think back to your point, there is a sense of, as African Americans, we do need to do what we need to do to preserve our culture as well, and to help our culture rise. Oftentimes, I do think we can be so communal that we don't take responsibility for the things we probably need to get it all where it needs to be. Even as a culture, we give it away. We perpetrate all these things. I don't think we need to lean all the way into the 4 pieces. But maybe let's check the room a little bit more before we do 8. But let's also keep that idea of love, because that is rooted in love. That we would be responsible for all and make sure that's Jesus's idea.
I used to know this lady. She was an older lady, maybe about 70. And she told me how her, people, her mom and grandparents and stuff used to watch white people. And she used this term, and she said, we used to teach them how to be human. I was like, what? What does that even mean? We used to teach them how to be human. And then I did some digging later, and I realized that they had something called the Black Plague. And that changed their everything, how their brain even worked, because it was almost like a dog-eat-dog world for them. Like that time period where people were just dying in the streets constantly, and you had to keep resources to yourself in order for you to survive. And this happened for so long. I can only imagine. I think it was like the Dark Ages or something like that.
When was this?
This was years ago. I don't even know what time frame this was, and maybe we can look this up, Keno, and find out. But it's the Black Plague / the Dark Ages, and Europeans were just some of the most barbaric at that time, because they were survival. They were trying to survive. And so scientists are saying that some of that may have it still might be in the DNA. And I think cultures probably were built off of that as well. But I'm not surprised. Wow. I'm not surprised.
Yeah. And I love white people. I get a lot of white friends too.
Yeah.
But I do think it's important for us to understand where everybody's coming from, so that we can properly diagnose the problem. Dr. King, I spent about 4 years studying at the King Center under Bernice King. So we were close for a really long time. Definitely appreciate her. A lot of the success I've been able to see is directly connected to her. So I want to honor her publicly. But Dr. King has, 6 steps of Kingian nonviolence and 6 principles of Kingian nonviolence. And these are the principles and the steps that he used in civil rights. So when you go to the King Center, Coretta Scott King birthed the King Center. They say she's the architect of the King legacy. You know this. But she birthed it to get his philosophy into the next generation, his philosophy and methodology. But when you get into his methodology, his first step is information gathering. Before we talk about cultural revolution, before you try to solve a problem or bridge a gap or defeat racism, whatever you want to call it, let's first gather all the information that we can so that we can properly understand the problem. And I think one of the issues that we see today with civil rights and our ability to create change at the highest level is not us protesting or speaking out, but I don't know that we fully understand the problem.
That's accurate, yeah.
And I think that I've seen cultural revolution take place and things move forward when we go to the other side and go, let me understand why you're doing this. And tell me your mentality behind this. And what are some of the lies you've believed that has you doing this? And when we can properly diagnose it, then we can build a strategy to create change. Anyway.
I love that.
We're here.
And now we've got a group of African Americans who I like to call are having a tantrum, if you will. And I talk to my friends sometimes. I think we've been free, and everybody's like, "Oh, we free? Oh, we about to show out." And you see the evolution of our freedom, and we're like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Come back! Stop showing your tail! There's enough twerking in the world. Bring it back, please. Like, put some clothes on." I think that might actually be. I think that might be. I think that might be the evolution of freedom. I think that some people are so like, I'm free. You're not gonna tell me. You know what I'm saying? And in a way, we need those people. Yeah. But we also need the people that's like, hold on, okay.
Absolutely.
Hey, calm down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's bring it back.
Yeah.
I think that's what's happening right now. But I also want to say, because you said earlier, do you think that it was intentional? And as you were talking, I do think that some things that were done were intentional to us to break down communities. Because I remember interviews that I've done, and I'm like, I can't say that. That's true. Some of this stuff was intentional to break us down. But I do think, like you said, that it's us first, period. And that's how it's been. And we see that, like you said, at the top. Great conversation. Wow, I could talk to you all day.
That's why I'm like, we got 30. What are we?
I know. This is going to be an hour.
Right.
Okay. So this is something interesting.
Yeah.
You were one of the first black pastors of Hillsong. Is that true?
Yeah, I was the first African American. I was married at the time, and we were the first African American pastors within the Hillsong world globally. So we planted their first African American led campus, and I think they were at the time they were definitely African Americans, and let me just say Africans in their world in leadership. But none had made it to the lead pastor level, and so it was. Can
you explain to everybody what that church and what, because I was not aware of this church at all.
Yeah, let me. I'm gonna start with honor.
Okay.
And then I'll go down the list.
All right. Here for that.
Church founded by Brian and Bobby Houston. Real dream for me to be a part of. When myself and my wife were looking for the right church to be a part of that could embody it. It was primarily my dream to go. Man, Hillsong is a phenomenal church. It was referred to probably as, at the time of its height, the most popular church in the world. It had a music group called Hillsong, and Hillsong United, Hillsong Young and Free, and Hillsong Worship, and they were the highest selling Christian group for the last 20 years.
What?
At the time. I mean, massive.
Never knew that. Teach me something else.
Yes. 100,000 members.
Okay.
On every continent except for Antarctica. 20,000 people in South Africa, 40,000 in Australia, 5,000 in France. At one time they had a church in Ukraine and Russia during the conflict. And it was interesting because when we were a part of their world during the Russia and Ukraine situation, we were talking to both pastors, and they were like, some people were underground and they were talking to each other. It was crazy because we had churches in both. It's about 1,000 members or 2,000 members in both, 10,000 in South America. And then they had 10,000 in Hillsong, New York, and 4,000, anyway, 100,000 members. And so very influential church. And, we got introduced to them the week of George Floyd.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And I just think that was the Lord, because we had planned to meet with them. We had a meeting on the books. It took us 6 months. First it started with, it was going to take us 6 months because the founder had to fly from Australia. He had to be in America. We had to get our schedules together. Like, hey, it's going to be 6 months to get this meeting. Well, right when we set the meeting, COVID happens. And so it takes us another 6 months to actually sell it. Now, the timeline of that doesn't fully line up, but I do know it took about a year for us to get the meeting. And the day we met, George Floyd had just happened 3 days prior. So I'm flying into LA to meet with the founder to talk about building a church that was focused on racial reconciliation. Because, as I said, my ministry journey started with Bishop Eddie Long. Then it went to Dr. Raphael Warnock right when he got to Ebenezer. And then within that, I kind of went back to Bishop, and then Bishop went through some things. And I spent those 4 years at the King Center, King family. So it was black. And then I swing over to Andy Stanley at North Point for about 8 years. And it's like a complete culture shock. But right towards the end of my stint with Andy Stanley, who's Charles Stanley's son, Andy Stanley pastors a church called North Point. It was about 40,000 members at the time, primarily in the city of Atlanta. I started craving the creation of a world that included both cultures and both expressions of ministry. And so within the white context of church, I learned a greater love for theology. That's when I went and got my master's, kind of coming out of there. And then, but in the black church is where I learned, family, is where I learned passion, is where I learned fire from heaven and miracles, signs, wonders. And I started missing both. And so, we met with the founder trying to bridge the gap between both of those worlds, and they were really excited. At the time we're meeting, LA is rioting around George Floyd. So it was an easy sell. Hey, America needs a church that would bridge the gap between both. And we just so happened to be their first African-American couple in their world. And I think at a time where they were also, predominantly a white institution, obviously, in terms of in leadership. They had churches that were extremely diverse, but white at the top. I think they were trying to figure out a global solution for solving this.
Okay, so looking back, and also I would say people, what do you say to people who say you were a diversity hire?
Great question. I love that question. Because I think two things can be true at the same time. And I think they kind of have to be sometimes. Going back to Dr. King, right? You need three types of people in the movement. You need agitators, you need negotiators, and you need reconcilers. You have to have all three. Dr. King was all three. He would agitate for the purpose, and this is what sometimes we miss in protest. Protest should be an agitation moment to get to negotiation for the sake of reconciling. But reconciliation isn't, what does he call it, negative peace? It's not for the sake of negative. Negative peace is peace absent of justice. But reconciliation should take place after justice has taken place, that we would then come back together, because the idea, it's a Jesus idea, it's also a Kingian idea, is that we're better together, right? That's the whole purpose. We talked about this. 8 pieces instead of 4. We're better together. We need each other, so on and so forth. And so Dr. King was all three, but now, as the movement became more splintered after his assassination, you kind of see, the embodiment of all three, but in different people. So some people they're just agitators. There's nothing wrong with them.
Yeah.
But every day.
We know a lot of
right.
them. They're all over the internet.
Right. Every day they're going, this is wrong.
Who you agitating
this sucks.
today?
Blah, blah, blah. Then you have some people that are just negotiators. They sit in the middle. Mm-hmm. They have a strategic advantage and a disposition about themselves that allows for them to balance both worlds. You kind of strike me as one of those individuals just in our conversation. I don't want to put anything on you. But in other words, you have the ability to stand in both places and go, you're right, you're wrong. You're wrong here, you're right.
That's very
Let's, pause, and I'll just say, when the first election of President Trump happened, my phone was off the hook. And it was black people calling me going, what's wrong with white people? And white people calling me going, what's the matter with black people? All in one day. And so I'm just getting out hold on, let me. And so that's kind of an example of a negotiator. Then you have to have individuals that go, okay, cool. And we saw this with Jay-Z in the NFL. When Jay-Z went to, they essentially put him over the halftime show. That was right on the heels of Kaepernick. And he got a lot of heat. He's like, why are you sitting with the NFL? And Jay-Z's statement to them is, Kaepernick kneeled. Now, hopefully the point was that we would have change. So now is the time for us to create change. And so now Jay-Z is in a reconciler seat and negotiator seat going, hey, now on the heels of that, we know that change is necessary because of Kaepernick, we can be at the table. And now that we're at the table, what are we actually going to do to change what's happening within the NFL? And so for me, yes, it was a diversity hire.
I knew it.
And I believe it was a hire for the sake of change.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're only there for 9 months because the church went through a massive global scandal. And we didn't get a chance to really do what we came there to do. But I will tell you this, before we left, we ended up having to resign. Not because, we were on the inside. We can talk a little bit about this if you want.
Yeah, I want to know about this thing, but I'll let you go.
Yeah, no, I'll close this story with this. We didn't get a chance to do what we wanted to do. But had things continued the way that they were going, there was so much change being created from the inside out. We were talking about doing a world tour around King philosophy to every Hillsong church in the world. We were talking, they had just formed a global diversity committee that had every race known to man that was already a part of the Hillsong world, but individuals were being elevated. And I think, it's interesting because, and then we're going to get to this scandal, sometimes when you're outside of the country, the American version of racism is a little different than racism in some parts of the world. They don't have the same hangups because of slavery in America. But we can come back to that later. Anyway, we ended up having to leave, so on and so forth. Write that down. Okay, and we can break that down too. It was a very interesting phenomenon.
Okay, this controversy with Hillsong, high level.
Yeah.
What was it about? And what happened after? Like, how did it conclude? How did it end?
Yeah. This is probably going to be posted, so I'll just say, again, off top, love Hillsong.
Okay.
And the church is still continuing today. I think it's probably half of what it was. I don't know the exact numbers, but it is still continuing, and I think they're being very diligent in this season to be quiet and to build quietly a healthy church. From my understanding, the controversy started out of Hillsong, New York. So Hillsong, New York was led by an individual by the name of Carl Lentz. He had a ton of celebrities attending his church as well. Carl Lentz at the time, phenomenal preacher. Brian Houston's son planted Hillsong, New York with Carl Lentz. Again, at the time, Hillsong United, one of the highest selling Christian groups of really all time. Joe Houston, Brian Houston's son, was one of the faces of Hillsong United. So you have Hillsong coming to America with these massive songs, partnering with a phenomenal preacher in Carl Lentz, who's this, trendy and so on and so forth. And they explode out of New York. 10,000 members at the PlayStation Theater, I think it was PlayStation Theater, in Times Square. It's in Times Square, isn't it? And so Kevin Durant was attending the church. Justin Bieber would frequent at the church. So many different celebrities. And it was a real, what individuals would call a real move of God, a revival kind of taking place in that city. And Carl really, he rose to a high amount of fame, a heavy amount of fame. I mean, I don't know, now I think he has maybe 500,000 followers on Instagram now, I'm not sure. But at the time, I mean, just on fire. Many of us in America were patterning how he was doing church. Like, we were patterning how we were doing church after how he was doing. Wow. We just felt like he was, on the cutting edge. Yeah. He goes through a few things within the COVID season that has an affair. And that's public. Okay. A lot of the documentaries are about that. And that affair kind of goes public. And because of his profile, it explodes all over the media. And because it was out of New York, you've got all of these massive media houses, many of them attending the church. So it's not only a pastor having an affair, it's my pastor has had an affair, and I happen to be at Good Morning America, or I happen to be at the New York Post, or I happen to be at Vanity Fair. So it just exploded. That then turned into a full-on media storm into every Hillsong church around the world. And so anything, and I want you to think about it like Nike. Here's how I explain it. Nike, one of the most well-known brands in the world. They got stores all over the place. And I want you to imagine that you go behind the books into the HR department of every store that Nike has ever had and look up any of the issues that have, right? And then you put them on the news. If you do that with any massive organization, it's going to be a lot of issues because that's just what happens when you scale. Coca-Cola's putting out fires all the time right now. They're just not being reported on. But if somebody decided, hey, I want to take Coke down, and they just start pulling up and they start, hey, you got fired from Coke 10 years ago. What's your, and that's what happened with Hillsong. And so it's, it's more money, more problems. It's heavy as the head that wears the crown. And so they would just, I think, position perfectly to be in the media and it to be one of the biggest, scandals in Christianity.
Why did you leave?
I left, and this is my honest reason. I left. I love the church, and I was there only for a year and a half. And I went there because of what I had seen and what I had experienced with the music and what it had done for me since age 16. At the time, I was I was in my 30s. And I loved it. I loved the brotherhood. They went, almost 20 to 30 years of high success within Christianity. Obviously, they're going to have some issues and some problems. Every organization does. I'm not defending anything because I wasn't there. But what I would say is you don't amass a certain amount of success without being good at something and without hopefully making a difference in some way. So many people got saved within the ministry globally. So I loved it. And I loved it when I was there. I was treated really well. They loved me. They gave me all time. And let me just pause and say this because Dr. Jamal Bryant came on my podcast.
Shout out Jamal.
Yes.
Dr. Jamal Bryant.
And he said to me, he's got to, and he's coming.
Is
he coming?
Yeah.
Has he been invited?
Yes, he has.
Okay.
They gave us a date of December, January, and then things are blowing up. So we're waiting.
He's coming. I'm just going to speak. He wants to come.
I used to go to the gym with him. You know me. We used to go at 5 o'clock in the morning. So.
Yes. Yeah. But he said something to me, and I'm getting to why I left. He said something to me on my podcast. He said the black church owes you an apology. And I was just like, I almost broke down. He said, it's a shame that you had to go to the white church to be supported at this level. He said, we owe you an apology. And I'm not going to speak into the apology. I love the black church. I'm with Dr. A.R. Bernard now. It's a predominantly African-American church. I love the black church. I came out of the black church. I'm black. Yeah. I got ordained in the black, But his point was, you came from us, but we didn't get behind you. And he's to that level. Yeah. And this is where I have to give Hillsong credit because they did come in and go, hey, we see what you're trying to do. Here's $500,000. Go figure it out to plant this ministry. So again, I was treated well. I loved it, and I was really excited about what we were doing. And I felt like from the inside, and again, this is just my truth. It's nobody else's truth. From the inside, looking out, everything that came out on the media, they addressed behind the scenes. We knew about it before it came out. They showed us the papers of here's what we did. Here was our due diligence around this situation when it happened 20 years ago, when it happened 10 years ago. This is right around Me Too and all. So everything is just, it got to a point for us where the media storm became so massive that we lost trust with our parishioners. And it was guilty by association. And I'll just tell you a story. I went to the airport. I was in the airport, I think the day after we had, almost every other week at one point, we were announcing another thing in the media because we had to address it. Because the New York Post had posted about it or something. And so for me, I went to the airport. I remember after a day of announcing something else, and I ran into one of our biggest donors, just in the airport randomly. You know how you run into people. Yeah. And he walks up to me. He says, "Hey, I think you got to make a decision because I'm out. And I love you, but I think," and he was a really high-powered business owner. He was like, "I think if you don't make a shift, you're going to lose the church." Because people were dropping like flies. We saw giving going down. So so for me, it was a simple decision. We just couldn't build a church. It was so new. We were 9 months in as a church plant, essentially a small business. It would be like opening a new, again, go back to Nike, a new Nike store in a region, and then Nike goes through this massive scandal. Remember Balenciaga went through everything they kind of went through? You open a new, I remember I was in Vegas when Balenciaga was going through it, and I walked in Balenciaga and then realized it was a ghost town. Yeah. I said, "Where's everybody at?" They were like, "You
like
don't
Target."
know?" Right. It's like Target. I can't speak on Target. That's not my issue. That's
not your ministry.
It's not my ministry. But it is Dr. Jamal's, and that's what he needs to come and talk about. But yeah, it was like that. It's like you open you imagine opening a Balenciaga store during that season, and that's what happened to us. So that was it. I mean, it was for no other reason than we just couldn't. If I could have kept the ministry going, I would have stayed. Yeah, I think so.
It was just too much controversy.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about two things. This is a twofold question. Christianity versus spirituality, right? And let's talk about the plummeting numbers of Christianity. We talked about Gen Z, how it's somewhere between 70-80% have turned their back on the church, Christianity, I mean. Let's talk about that. Are you guys aware of this? Do you know what's going on? And what's the fix? What are you guys trying to do? And why? What's happening? Why are they doing that? Why is everybody spiritual? No. Okay, I'm not Christian. I'm spiritual.
Big topics. Let me separate it so I can hit it. Christianity and spirituality.
Yep. And then plummeting numbers.
Well, I think both of these problems go together, but I'm going to talk about them separate for the sake of understanding, and then maybe marry them. So let's define Christianity versus spirituality. Essentially what people are saying is, I don't think Jesus is the only way. That's essentially what's happening. We talked about, I got my master's, I went to like 4 seminaries. So I've studied at a lot. I went to an Australian seminary, I went to a predominantly white seminary, then I went to an Assemblies of God seminary, then I spent a little bit of time in some, in the African American workspace, and then obviously got ordained there. So I'm kind of, I'm well versed in this. But when the deeper you go within theology, and the deeper you go within the idea of the church and Christianity, it really boils down to one thing, and it's the exclusivity of Christ. That's it. Christianity is about the exclusivity of Christ. You say we believe Jesus is the only way. That is offensive to a lot of people. I had a preacher once in the pulpit say, and I never forgot it, the gospel is offensive. Just offensive. It is offensive. It offends what the culture says is right. It often goes against where the world is going, and it is very offensive at its core when you say Jesus is the only way. And Let me press pause and come over to the other side. I am a pastor, so I believe in the exclusivity of Christ. But let's just, again, we're defining the problem. You say to a Muslim who's been Muslim their whole life, that ain't the way. You say to someone that practices Judaism, which Judaism is the actual foundation of Christianity. The whole Old Testament is Judaism. Hey, the way is this. You just go around a religion. It's offensive. It's like, well, I built my life on it. I'm single now, right? We didn't talk about that publicly. I think we did. No, I said in my ex. I'm single now, and so I'm just like, I'm learning how to date again and all that. We can talk about that later. But the point I'm bringing up is that I met this female that was Muslim, and a friend. I was like, beautiful, and a friend of mine who was Muslim. He knew her, and I didn't know she was Muslim at the time, and I was like, "What's up with your girl?" I have to be very mindful because I'm a pastor. And he said, "You want me to like?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "No, she's Muslim," and I was like, "Oh." I said, like, is she like deep Muslim?
Is she like diet?
Right.
Diet, like light Muslim?
Like, is she like, how deep into this is like?
Is she like calorie free?
Right. Like, which way are we? He said, she ain't that deep. I said, okay. I said, so she might come up.
That's terrible. It's so bad.
I had to give you a little comedy. And so he was like, yeah, she might go. Anyway, so he introduces me to her. And he says, I didn't tell her you were a pastor. I said, well, what, do I have an inroad? I'm like, what are we doing? Everybody listen to this is like, now, pastor, you can't be taught. I'm like, I know. I'm single. Let me learn. and so she, I go to her Insta. He said, okay, she was flattered. Here's her Instagram. She wants you to have her Instagram. I said, okay, I got it. I go on her Instagram, 5 layers down, full on, like just covering. I said, so I'm like, I gotta tell her because as soon as she go to my Instagram, it's over. It's first thing you see, lead pastor. So I hadn't talked to her since this introduction. So I'm getting ready to leave where we were. I said, hey, just want to introduce myself. She's smiling. She's like, she's holding my hand. She's holding it for like a long time. I'm like, oh, she's really interested. I said, I just want to let you know, as soon as you go to my Instagram, you're gonna see I'm a pastor. And she went. She was like, oh, and holding my hand. I said, I know. I said, so just think about it.
Not think about it. Think about changing your entire life. Everything that you learned since a child.
Just think about it and send you a DM if you want to connect. And, but we didn't connect.
Yeah. That's
not the first time that's happened to me.
Yeah.
It being single and being a pastor now it's really taught me a lot about how offensive the gospel is to a lot of individuals. And so I think this generation has gotten to the point where they say they've camped out on that issue and they go, I'm not a Christian, I'm spiritual. And here's what they're saying. I believe in God. I don't think Christianity is the only way. I don't think, and I think it's offensive that you do.
Wow.
I think that plays a part in the decline of Christianity. But let's go a little deeper. I'm going to go up higher now. I'm going to come lower.
Okay, let's go.
Okay. The UK is considered post-Christian. So I'm going to introduce you to 3 ideas.
Post-Christian.
Yeah. You probably have heard these terms. Some people have. If you're in the apologetic space, and I can't go too deep in this because I'm not in the apologetic space, but apologists, all they do is study how to defend the faith. If we go into ancestralism, they're gonna go there with you. I'm not gonna go all the way there with you. I know some, but I haven't studied to that. Like they just study all the way in there. But you obviously, as a pastor, you have to have you have to have answers. You have to have reasons, because I think that's another reason why people are leaving. But we'll get back to that as well. But when you study apologetics, you're introduced to 3 terms: post-Christian, pre-Christian, Christian. Christian nation, post-Christian nation, pre-Christian nation. When America was founded, it was founded on what they would call Christian ideals. So it's and we're still kind of considered a Christian nation. When at some point within the UK and the Commonwealth, let's just do London, England, all that, it was essentially a Christian nation. And it wasn't just a Christian, it was like ultra Christian.
Yes, the founding.
It's like,
the founders were there.
Yes, they still look at the Queen of England as the head of the Anglican Church.
Wow.
To this day, she's still the head of the Anglican Church, and now obviously it has evolved. But there was once a time, and you go back in the medieval times, where you see that the church within the UK, within London, within England, was heavily a part of the government within that system, and so that's where we get the idea of separation of church and state, because we got to a point where they said, we got to separate this. It's too much Bible governing law and da 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 da. So what that turned the nation into was people ran so far away from the church because they felt like it was this is too much church. So the nation then swung from being a Christian nation to a post-Christian nation. And so what post-Christianity includes is a nation where the government itself is anti all religion, and the nation itself is anti all religion. UK, post-Christian. Australia, post-Christian. Most of the Commonwealth. America is headed into what they call post-Christianity. And you see it in the signs. So a lot of it is just history kind of repeating itself. We're becoming what London has been. Now the UK and London has become pre-Christian. So I'll define it a couple ways. In a post-Christian nation, anti-religion, don't want to hear about God. So the church has to work really hard to get people to become believers. The media is against God, all these other things. In a pre-Christian nation, nobody knows what the Bible is because they've just come out of post-Christian. So it's like, the Bible, what's that? And it's not, we're not against it. We have no idea what it is because it's been choked out of society. So now churches, I have a few friends that pastor in Oxford, and they're like, man, it's the one of the greatest times we've ever experienced as a church because people are walking in going, who's Jesus? And then when we tell them the idea, they're like blown away by the story, and they're like, well, can I be a Christian? But it's because they've had all these. But now America is headed into post-Christianity. And so everybody's just running away. They feel like the nation has been too Christian. And you can see it in our laws. It started when they started taking prayer out of schools. You can see it when they legalized gay marriage, all of these other things. It's just like, I'm getting away, I'm getting away, I'm getting away, I'm getting away. And so I think that's a large part of why people are leaving the faith. And why they're deciding to be spiritual versus Christian.
Wow, that was great. I had an aha moment though, because America was built obviously, like you were saying, on Christianity, but I think it stemmed from a king wanting a divorce, and the Pope would not allow it. And so the
Come
church,
on, give us those facts.
the church was split up, and so a lot of people don't realize that they're modern day Protestants.
Ooh,
yeah,
modern day
Protestants. So all of these divisions, you got the Kojic and the Baptists and this and that and Seventh-day Adventists. It's just modern day Protestants. You came from another land because you didn't want to follow these rules or whatever.
Rebellion.
Yeah, and you had your own set of Christianity doctrines that you wanted to follow, and that's how our country was started. Yeah, so you're right. We're going through our post, possibly.
We are.
But now it makes sense as to why there's so many African Americans that are so Christian, and why I hang out with my white friends, and I'm like, well, what y'all doing today? Oh, we're going to game.
We got brunch. They got mimosas.
Oh, we went to church at
11.
Yeah, it's done at 12. We're gone.
Mimosas.
Right. We're wearing gym shoes to church.
And we may stream online. We may.
Yeah.
We'll catch it.
Yeah. But it's not an event like it is for us. We're not planning a whole week like, listen, I'm going to kill him with this outfit.
Yep.
Yeah. It's more like, we went to church. Yeah. Okay. All right. Touching on that just a little bit. I noticed throughout my entire life, and probably you have too, there's not as many men in church as there are women. Why is it? Is it because, my dear friend, men see the pastor as another leader or as a hustler that's trying to hustle them out of their spot, out of their money, and so on and so forth? Like, what is there competition between the head of household and the pastor? Because I know so many women who want to marry their pastor. It's scary. Yeah, they're on it. Well, pastor said. You're like, okay, all right. How do you go against the pastor?
Wow, my brain just like I had an answer, and then when you hit me with that, my brain went. Okay, let me try to jump around a little bit. Why don't men go to church? Let me start with my answer, and then I'll go into the idea of respect, because I think that's what you're head of household. What we have found, and now I'm with Dr. Errol Bernard, which is predominantly male in terms of church. It's like he started a organization called International Christian Brotherhood, ICB. It's about 5,000 men in it. He came out of the Nation of Islam.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so he took a lot of, when I met him, I said, what did you bring from the Nation? And he said, I found family at the Nation and God in Christianity. And so he took a lot of that, those Nation principles, and as it pertains to family and the strength of the man and all of these different things, and brought it into and married it with the Jesus philosophy and methodology. And has seen a lot of men come to church, but I think it's because he has discovered a few things. But and I think it coincides with my answer on this as to why men don't go to church. I'm gonna quote Bishop T.D. Jakes. Okay.
Prepare. It's about to be good.
All right. He says, "We lose men in the turns of life." And I love that. I never forgot it. I was at a men's conference, and he said it, and I never forgot it. I think I was 23, but he said, "We lose y'all in the turn of life." So he said, so when you're riding a motorcycle, the most important part is the turn, and if you don't lean right, if you don't lean into it the right way, you could destroy everything, and that's where we lose men. Men, and the turns of life would be death in the family. I lost my job, got diagnosed with cancer, got diagnosed with this, moved from one city to the next, can't figure out where my next meal is going to come from, having an identity crisis, the turns, and that's where we lose men. Men have a very hard time dealing with the difficulties of life, and men, and I'm a man, so obviously I feel like I'm biased because I'm a man. But men have a very difficult time in life. So do women. But the life for a man can be very complex. And so with that and the way that we see life, we have to have a pastor that we feel is real. If we don't feel like the pastor is real, authentic, we're out. And I think because of, I'm going to call it, ooh, wow, my brain is going in a lot of places. Because Christianity has been sanitized on Sunday, and because the institution of Christianity does not give leeway for talking about I'm going to call it the realer. Real isn't a word, but the more real things that are happening in life. In other words, we bought into this idea that everybody's perfect. We got to chase this perfect thing. And if you have problems or if you're going through this, it's wrong. And we don't want to hear about it. It's like, tell me about it after you got through it. I really don't want to. And if you go too far, I didn't really come to church for that. So we don't want to talk about the real things. And it becomes a problem. It feels like we're saying too much or we're being too worldly. Men need real. What's going on? Because I'm dealing with this. And so men feel like church is soft.
Oh, okay.
So they just don't come. They're like, I'll get to that later.
Can I add something to that, though? And then there's a question in there, too.
Yeah.
Why are there not more women leading churches? But I'll go back. Historically, in African culture, women were known for they're kind of the head of spirituality, and they were intuitive. And so with men, if they found a wife, they would look for one of the most intuitive, spiritual, connected women, period. Like if you could find a woman that was spiritually in tune to Mother Earth, you were good because you knew that you would live a long time. She could tell when it was getting ready to rain, when there was going to be a famine, things of that nature. Men, historically speaking, have always dealt with what you see in front of you. And women have always historically dealt with what you don't see. So the feeling, the emotions, do you feel it in the air, the vibe, the energy, and obviously the intuitiveness. But as you were talking, it dawned on me when you said that they deal with the things that are real, but spirituality leans more to femininity because historically that's what we're good at. I can tell you, I can sense danger faster than a man because I don't know. Maybe it's just coded in my being. But everybody that I've ever met, as far as men versus women can tell dangers coming faster. And I mean, that's even scientific. So as you're talking, I'm just thinking like maybe that has something to do with it. Spirituality has always leaned toward femininity, not masculinity. And things that are in your face, that's in person, that you can see, touch, that's tangible, lean towards masculinity. And they need each other.
Yeah, I think answering your why aren't women...
More women.
More women leading in the church. Yeah, it's theology. So...
But don't you see how that can be alienating? So we alienate this group of people, because I grew up in church in Seventh-day Adventist, and women weren't allowed to be pastors. I mean, it's changed now.
Right.
But some of the smartest...
Oh, it's changed?
I think so.
Okay.
Some of the smartest people I knew were women. It wasn't men. You go to school with guys, and they're like the dumbest that you've ever met. Like, how are we in the same class? Like, you're eating paste. Do you see what I'm saying?
Not
and
paste.
You're eating paste, and now you're leading a congregation. How is this possible? I've always been around very smart, intellectually sound, spiritually sound women, and now they're not heading the church. You go to your grandmama's house, you learn how to pray there. I didn't learn to pray from my granddad. I learned to pray from my grandmother. How is that possible that all your spirituality, when it turns to your family, comes from the head of the woman, but the male is the head of the church? How is that even possible?
Well, again, we can go down a lot of roads on that.
I know, but let's go down one.
Okay.
What's
what
your
I will
opinion?
say is, I believe in women leadership in the church. Always have. When we planted Story Church, and even at Hillsong, when we had Hillsong, one of our core pillars was women in leadership, because we saw that historically, it was an issue. And I didn't really understand that, to your point, until I came over to the white church. So in the black church where I grew up, I got ordained by a woman. Like the second time. First time, Bishop A. Long. Second time was a female. So I spent a lot of time with Dr. Bernice King, who's a woman, who's ordained as a reverend. Our principals, my mother was a strong black woman. So for me, when they started telling me that women weren't leading in the church, I didn't see it till I came to the white side. And I went, well, what is this?
Right.
Well, and it was like, theologically, there are certain pockets, and not just in the white church, there are pockets in the black church too. I've seen it more in the Caucasian-led churches, entire denominations go, hey, Paul makes a statement in the New Testament about women not speaking in churches. And so that's a lot of people's theology around it. They take that verse and they say, Paul, as one of the apostles of the church, has said that women shouldn't be speaking. But they've misunderstood that passage of Scripture. And all throughout Scripture we see, there's judges, women that were judges in the Old Testament, prophets, women prophets in the Old Testament. The first individuals that reported that Jesus had been seen or was risen was a woman. Again, it's a mischaracterization, a misunderstanding of theology, but that theology has turned into entire denominations. And again, in the black community, for me, especially in Atlanta, going back to Atlanta, it was one of those things of like, I didn't know what being black and not being excellent was, because it just was. And so saying a woman I couldn't even fathom the concept. I think where we start to drill down a little bit more and it gets more nuanced is when individuals have an idea around the head of the family being the man, and then coinciding that with the head of the church. I think we have a much more integrated idea where, well, it's also how you view submission as well. But within that, there's a spiritual head, but then within that, we both kind of lead together. So
I definitely think Christianity is definitely supportive of masculinity. And I think that it leaves femininity out when it shouldn't. It's scary. I did a lot of research, and I believe that it lends to women's voices not being heard. It lends to women
and it's
not
a travesty.
being able to vote.
It's a travesty.
It bleeds everywhere.
It's a travesty.
I mean, and it not just bleeds everywhere. I mean, it bleeds literally everywhere, every country. You're like, wow, if I was a man, you would listen? It's crazy. Last question.
Let me just say this about women. I got to say this.
Okay.
Some of my most spiritual moments, life-changing moments have come on the other side of women speaking with "Thus saith the Lord." And so I just, I believe the Lord gives gifts for a reason, and He's given women a lot of spiritual gifts and it's a travesty that they've not been able to exercise it. So I just wanted to make that statement because I think it's important.
Yeah. I appreciate that. All the women everywhere. Because I'm telling you, we thought about it. We're like, wait a minute now.
Right.
It don't make any sense. But there's some women that prefer male pastors.
Yeah.
But I think it's because men are easily manipulated, and they don't realize how easily they're manipulated. And the fact that they are, like, I know too many women that will make a pastor a goal. They will make a goal out of you.
To marry them?
To marry you, to
Wow.
to sabotage your life, to get you I mean, oh, pastor, I need your help. I've had friends who were, and I went to a theology school, so that's why I know. Wow. But I've had friends who are pastors' wives, and I'm like, girl, do not let such and such call him at 12 o'clock at night. Sister Bernice is, so anyway.
Oh my God.
But that's one of my biggest concerns is that they are. So you're always going to be in that space of controversy because women, they are ruthless. If they want something and a part of your brain shut off, scientifically speaking, you cannot reason. You know that? You cannot reason. If you see a certain part of a woman's anatomy and you're turned on, you can no longer reason, which is why they use women as spies, because they could get information if they took their clothes off. It's crazy.
But that's what they call being led by the other mind.
Yeah, a lot of men are. You can't. It's scientific. You can't help it. And if you can, you've worked really hard. Like I'm saying,
You outside.
Yeah. All right, last question.
Yeah.
Dating in church.
Ooh.
Okay. How do you date? And this got to be short because we got to wrap it up.
Yeah.
How do you date now that you're single and you're a pastor?
It's hard. I ain't even gonna hold you. It's hard.
Okay.
It's hard for a lot of reasons. You have to consider the congregation. You have to consider your platform, and you have to, which shrinks your pool, because you really can only deal with women that understand and appreciate the platform, and are also willing to govern themselves accordingly for the sake of the ministry, and be able to balance the pastor and the man, because both are there. And it's very difficult because sometimes you meet women that just want the pastor but don't want the man. Then sometimes you meet women that just want the man and don't want the pastor. And then you're like, well, who am I supposed to be today? Like, and can I be this? But like, how? Like, and then because you don't want to turn off the romantic side of who you are. Because that's what many women enjoy, and obviously it's a part of it. to build a really healthy relationship. But then there's also this spiritual component. My therapist says it this way: you're asking people to put on a lot of hats and be able to take those hats off and put on other ones, all within a matter of many
A pastor
moments.
going to a therapist? What kind of new age? This is a new kind of reverend. I'd like to also add, you need to find a woman who's smart.
Come on.
Because you bounce ideas. I've dated a lot of multimillionaires, men who have businesses. And the smart ones always get a smart woman, because when you're late at night and that pillow talk, you want to be able to talk to her about different things. And you want her to be able to know what's going on. But if you got a dummy, ooh, Lord.
Uh-oh.
Just saying. You got to find one, but she's dumb.
It's real.
It's a real problem.
It's real.
Yeah.
It's tough, but, it's been interesting.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying it,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Final question. It's the end. You're going up to heaven. See God. What do you hope God says to you?
Oh!
Is it like
Ooh,
this?
not the emotional question.
At the very end.
I hope he says, you did your best. And you did what I wanted you to do.
Did you? Have you?
I'm doing my best.
Are you?
Yeah, I am. And I'm working on finishing the race well. That's what I'm working on.
I love it. Pastor Sam Collier. Want to give me a handshake or a little dab?
No,
Yeah.
please.
Thank you for coming in. This has been a very enlightening conversation.
Yeah.
I absolutely enjoyed it.
It was an honor.
I think you are going to lead a lot of people. I think that if you can keep this energy, this realness, this authenticity, you're going to go places. I mean, you're already going places, but I'm saying I know a lot of pastors. I went to school with a lot of pastors, and they think they're supposed to act, do, be a certain way, and you're not, and I appreciate that. Thank you for coming in. Go ahead and tell everybody where they can find you.
What camera?
That's your
Wow, thank you for that. Sam Collier, SamCollier, Instagram, Facebook, website.
There you go.
Boom.
Church.
Google.
Which church are we leading now?
CCC Atlanta.
Okay.
So Christian Cultural Center Atlanta. It's the Atlanta location of the Brooklyn location under Dr. A.R. Bernard, Pastor Jamal.
Yes.
Here we are.
Pastor Dr. Jamal. Okay. And then and tell them where they can find your book.
Oh, Amazon, A Greater Story, Sam Collier. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Wow.
Guys, if you like this type of content, and I know you do, make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe. And of course, make sure if you have anything to share, if you want to do anything, you want to write in, you can email us directly at info@smittyand.com. Again, that's info@smittyand.com. And until next time, guys, take care of one another.